with respect to, trying to help people, we do have, Alessandro Molatare is a filmmaker who is documenting a lot of this process, and he's, I think, excited to, we documented people. He went and filmed their lives before they came and worked with us, so he got an experience of what their life was with Tourette's. Then the participants came to Albany. We filmed them working with Nancy Salzman and the team, and then they went back into their life, basically having overcome Tourette's, and then he filmed them. And hopefully, over the next year, that documentary will be coming out. I'm just curious, what do you hope could come from that, or is there anything around that?
I have mixed feelings about the documentary. I love the beauty of it. I love what it illustrates. I worry that people will misinterpret it as some sort of a miracle cure. It might be a really sharp tool that's unique, that may seem miraculous, but there's no miracle about it. It's not. I believe, if it is truly our tool and the sharpness of our tool and the uniqueness of our tool that is doing this, I think in some ways the uniqueness is what's giving unique results. But certainly, I don't want it to be interpreted the wrong way. But I also want people to have a deep, moving experience with that journey. Because it's a journey of people overcoming adversity. It's a journey of us overcoming adversity. Here we have, not just in the Tourette study, but in Rainbow Cultural Gardens with children, we have results that go against what scientists say is true. That's always difficult. To real scientists, that's exciting. To other people, that's either scary or miraculous. Neither one of those things. It's the way science has always worked. And if you look at most science, within 50 years, it'll be shown to be wrong. With respect to Rainbow Cultural Gardens, there's all sorts of beliefs about the linguistic capabilities of children and their what they do, what they don't do, all of this thing. And we have we have no results that show that science is accurate, and expanded results in not 1, not 2, not 5, not 10, many more cases that show that the science is just not thinking about this quite right. But the interesting thing is, this is a child's ability to develop language, but that's not really what our focus is. That's not what our desire is. Again, it's an effect. Children having this type of linguistic development that they experience with us is an effect of focusing on the child having more joy, better experience of life, more self-reliance, more self-awareness. The Tourette's thing is a result of, focusing on you having a better life, more self-awareness, more joy. And that also is scary to people, because they want to make us into the Tourette's program or the Rainbow program or this program. It's not. You might say we're more the Joy program or the, building of the human psyche program, to be self-reliant, to be moral, to be ethical, to have character that can be applied with the person's will. Unfortunately, for many people, when someone comes into a program and develops self-reliance, a lot of the dependencies are shifted, and that's scary to people who don't know what it is. It'll be scary to people to see, someone with Tourette's can go in, and after a few hours, they don't have Tourette's. There are all these people with Tourette's. Why don't they do it? Why aren't you doing it? Every person with Tourette's, it's almost an affront to them. If you've lived with Tourette's for 20, 30 years, and you hear, and maybe gone through deep brain stimulation and have been on drugs all these times, and we have all the people who are in the Tourette study, the drugs, they're not on drugs anymore, all of this sort of a thing. And suddenly you hear, all this time, all this stuff that I went through, you mean there was just some program where I could have had a conversation with someone for 4 hours and it'd all be gone? That's very disaffirming. It's like I used to have a funny joke in my own head when I was a little kid. We would always go to my relative's house And this was when I was, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. And I'd get in the back of a car and we'd go driving off. And 4 hours later, we'd be at my relative's house. And I used to make a joke that my parents were just pulling my leg. That actually, they were just driving around in a big circle. And if they really wanted to get there quickly, it's actually only 5 minutes away. But this whole circuitous loop. Well, when someone takes a long circuitous loop to get to a result that would have been much easier, not all people just say, well, that was a great journey and how much I learned from my 30 years of having Tourette's, and now it's changed in a conversation. This is all great. They feel totally disaffirmed. They feel that their identity has been threatened. And rightfully so. That's a normal human reaction. So we have to be mindful of that. We have to be compassionate about that.
I know.
Yeah, go.
That was my experience when we first were looking for the candidates. Mm-hmm. And I think it was years ago now, but I posted on Facebook, hey, look, I overcame Tourette syndrome. I dealt with it for 20 years. We're looking for someone to be in the study. There's a grant for it. And the reaction was really negative at first, from a lot of people in the Tourette's community. And I think I didn't have that understanding then.
It's scary. To find something that you've toiled and suffered tremendously all your life with, it could have been removed, seemingly could have been removed. Even if there's a possibility it could have been removed in a few-hour conversation, that's rough.
May I ask you about, you mentioned about like being labeled a Tourette program or something like that, but more, it's a question about labeling with children. Mm-hmm. When I was a little kid, I had the tics when I was younger, and then when I was 9, I went to a doctor, and they said, you have Tourette's. Mm-hmm. And then that was the label that I got. As I got older and I started to understand more about how I was experiencing the Tourette's, I had this urge on the inside, then there was the tic, but when I was younger, that was all labeled as Tourette's, and it was just one thing. What is your...
Labels are a system. And understand, labeling is a tool, and it has both benefits and downsides. The benefits of a label, it allows you to work with something. It allows you to categorize it and utilize the science based on those categories with that. The downside of the label is it becomes a limiting belief because no one is the label. Every label is approximate. Even the label that you are male. How do we define male? Okay, you have a Y chromosome. How do we define that? What about someone that is an XXY? Are they a male? What of, all this transgender stuff? What about someone, all of these questions. The definition of male at points seems really clear, but it actually is fuzzy edges. You can always find the fuzzy. You can always find the definitional issue. So labels are both a positive thing and a negative thing. They're a tool. They need to be used. You don't want to over-label someone. It's almost better to say, well, you have you're a very unique person. You have a constellation that at current point seems to be more like this. We would label it this. This label may or may not apply in the future. But then to most people, that's too nebulous anyway. And that may even be, how is the exact way you should label labels? That's the same problem. It's self-referential. So we have to accept the good with the bad. Probably that label, maybe it was more bad than good for you, but for some people it's more good than bad. Maybe it was both for you. I don't know. It certainly has helped 6 other people or whatever that have come out after you because we've looked for people labeled with Tourette's. Sure. And we were able to improve their life. So your label, which helped us understand the label, and the label that was affixed to all of them allowed us to identify them to help them with their lives. Were you your Tourette syndrome? No. You had things that are best identified as what is called Tourette syndrome. Is it exactly Tourette syndrome? What is exactly Tourette syndrome? Every person who has Tourette syndrome has a different version of Tourette syndrome.
Well, it's funny you say that. I have I have a belief that sort of, now that I've had this sort of transformation, that we all have Tourette's in a sense. If you look at, my definition of Tourette's is there's an uncomfortable feeling in my body. I call that the itch. And then I ticked, and that was the equivalent to a scratch. So I was scratching my itch all the time. When I was younger, it seemed to be completely involuntary. And then as I grew older, it seemed that I had more voluntary control over the tick. In my opinion, though, if you look sort of at the general public, we all have different uncomfortable feelings and cover it, whether it be cigarettes or sex or talking could even be it.
Or rolling over in bed.
Or rolling over in bed, whatever it might be. But when someone goes to the refrigerator to cover a bad feeling, we don't call that a medical condition. In the same way of somebody barking like a dog or ticking the N-word. I'm just curious of your thoughts on we all have Tourette's.
Well, you know, I certainly have my idiosyncrasies, and I actually worked hard to develop, to allow free expression. I believe that, you know, I have different parts of my brain, different associations with my brain. There are times when I see one type of thing better. Others, you know, if I'm playing music, there are other sort of things that I process, it appears. Maybe all my own story, but I've developed quite a vivid story and repertoire to be able to solve problems. And I do different things. Some of them involve at times singing, shouting, yelling. I have a whole bunch. I always make up words, sounds. You know, if you were to watch me solve a problem, if you could get in those private moments, forget private moments, even if you were to walk around with me, you know, the places where I live or whatever, I do weird things. I make weird noises. I call people all sorts of things. I call myself all sorts of things. I call actions sounds. I'll hear a sound. I'll respond to the sound as I'm working out things in my mind. I go into certain states where I intentionally allow for that to flow. You might call it an impressionistic state. You know, people who either do impressionistic painting, sculpture, auto writing, whatever they call it, if you surrender to whatever you're feeling within your body and your emotions and what you might call your psyche or soul, all sorts of interesting things come out. And I believe that that is a valid process for me to help me solve problems, to help me understand things. You know, do I do it all the time? Do I do all sorts of subconscious tics? I do. I certainly do. Do I walk strangely? I walk very strangely. You know, I many things that I do. Well, people who crack their knuckles, is that a tic? They feel this thing. I had friends who used to really go into detailed cracking, then they do the sideways thing, and people would be going, ah, and then we go, you know, they say, oh, I can't. I feel like I have to crack it, otherwise it can't move. They feel that way.
So what's your, this maybe would have been a good question for the very beginning of what's your definition of Tourette's then, from what you understand?
My definition of Tourette's is right now, it's defined by the Tourette's community as something, and I accept that definition. If I am working with someone that has tics, I believe same thing with Nancy Salzman. Normally our main objective wouldn't be to remove the tics, but if it is, we're still working with them as they exist, whether they are a Tourette's person, a knuckle cracker, a smoker, obsessive compulsive disorder, migraine headache, gosh, I don't feel well when I smell, you know, ginger snaps, whatever that stimulus response is, you know. So we look at it that way. And some of those constellations of stimulus response, people label as Tourette's, the experts label as Tourette's. We're not experts in it. We just take that for, okay, you call that Tourette's. Someone comes to us and says, well, I want to remove tics, okay. Here's how we do it, stimulus response. Oh, I want to remove my smoking. Okay, here's how we do it, stimulus response. Same thing, broken record.
Broken record. I think I just have one more question. If I can look at my novel.
Okay, you can look at your notes.
But this was more on a sadder note. As you know, there was one girl that we had given the green light to come be part of the study. She had very severe Tourette syndrome. She was actually in talks. So she wasn't signed up for the procedure, but she was in talks to get deep brain stimulation because her Tourette's was so severe. she went through the interview process. We okayed her. She was planning on coming to Albany. And then what I imagine happened is that I think, she saw all the controversial stuff online about ESP, about you. And in the end, she decided not to come. And this killed me for many reasons. But one, here she was willing to believe articles online and was willing to potentially, again, I don't know if this is the route that she went, but she was willing to continue conversations to maybe have her brain operated on versus just even testing.
Having a 4-hour conversation or whatever.
Yes.
Well,
and I just want to know your thoughts.
Well, the stuff that's online, there's a real positive to it and a negative to it. The real positive to it is if someone examine it, I'll say the negative first. The negative are the stuff that's said. The positive is if people examine the people saying it. We don't have yet what I consider strong critics. And in some ways I'd rather have rational critics. These are more, I don't think they're motivated by such good things. So, here you have this cohort of people that are vocal against us. And these are people who have, some of them prison records, some of them even people who are in prison currently. It's like, all right, who do you believe those? Or you have the people who've spoken positively about us, people like even the Dalai Lama and, people who are heads of state, people who are royalty, people who are captains of industry, people who, billionaires and all sorts of people, major public figures. And to hold what a small group of really people who don't have good, when you talk about credentials, these are people who have criminal type credentials and worry about that compared to the other things and actually make a decision where you choose to go with what the criminals say compared to what the positives are. That's sad. It is a statement. Our world, the negative news travels much faster and is much more stinging than the positive news. Even if the negative news is a lie. So the bad thing is that what is said and how we suffer from it. The good thing is I do believe that a rational person or a person that examines deeply will find that these things are mainly baseless, and the things that are true are not particularly bad. You can take anything that's true and spin it into something that's horrendous. So it is very sad that this person may have been influenced that way. And it does bring up, and one of the things we talk about, speaking with honor. When you go and you say something negative about someone in a public forum, it's really good if you understand what your effects are, negative or positive. And saying something negative can be very harmful to other people. And a lot of people who are, you have skeptics and you have cynics, and I define them. I say a skeptic is someone who seeks to turn magic into science, and I'm one of them. A cynic is someone who seeks to turn good to bad. So whenever they hear something good, they're looking to say the bad. I don't listen to cynics so much. I listen to skeptics. And right now we have a lot of cynics, not so many skeptics.
Thank you for elaborating on that. And just a personal thank you. Because of what you've done over your life, what you've dedicated to studying, what you've developed with Nancy Solzman, I have a very different life because of what you've done. And, thank you from, just from the bottom of my heart for everything.
You're welcome. It's interesting. I think I'm an odd person who's developed an odd set of tools that are unique and work well. And accepting my oddness is part of it, of being a friend. You know, I'm glad that we have the friendship that we do, and we play volleyball together. And
Sometimes I'm not that great, so.
none of us are. We just enjoy throwing ourselves on the floor.
True.
So, well, thank you so much for doing this.
Yes, and thank you for taking the time.